In this video, we're going to talk about plugins. So if we go to settings again, at the top level, there's plugins here. Let me just drag that up a bit. And we can see over here, we've got marketplace and installed, and I'm on the installed tab, and it shows a list of all the plugins I've got installed. Scrolling down, we can see a lot of bundled ones, which come bundled with Rider. I can disable them if I want. We can also see straight away that I've got a couple of plugins which are out of date, so I can update from here. I haven't updated them because I wanted to show it in this video, but you can see at a glance it's updatable, and I can click update all to update all of them. Any install plugins we can disable, or we can uninstall. So I could, the details of this, I could click that and say uninstall, or I could disable via this button or via the checkbox. I've disabled this one because I'm currently using the JetBrains AI assistant rather than GitHub Copilot. So you can see that it's grayed out here. If I go to the marketplace, we can actually search for additional plugins. And these have got different groupings. So there's staff picks here. So we can see some that are suggested by members of JetBrains staff. If I scroll down further, we can see new and updated. We can see top downloads and top rated. Now, whilst you can install a plugin from disk from a file, normally it would come from the marketplace or a plugin repository. So typically all these are on the JetBrains marketplace, which we'll have a look at in a sec, but you can actually say manage plugin repositories, and you can add your own custom one. For example, you might have an internal one just for your company. You can do that. In the GitHub repository associated with this course, I'll make sure there's a README with a link on how to host your own plugin repository. It's also worth pointing out that when you install a plugin, the plugins can modify various parts of the UI as well as settings. So for example, in Tools, we've got Aspire added here. In Editor, we've got Vim added here. So these are all extra things that the plugin has added to the UI. So as well as the settings UI in Rider, we can also browse plugins on the web. So plugins.jetbrains.com. And you can filter by Rider, but a lot of the plugins work across IDEs. So there's quite a wide ecosystem of plugins which work across these. So it's not just scoped to developers creating plugins explicitly for Rider. And as you can see here, it's saying search all over 5,000 Rider plugins. So there's a lot to choose from. This is a very similar set of options that we saw in the Rider settings UI. So we've got staff picks. So we can say show all on the right. Top downloaded, new plugins, top rated. If I go to one of them, let's just do this one. Then over on the right, see where it says get. If you just wait a second, it will detect what you've got installed, and you have the option to install it from the web page. So that will install into your Rider instance. We will talk about themes in the next video, but it's worth pointing out that a theme is also a plugin, a type of plugin. So that's here as well. There's also this option, plugin ideas. So if you've got an idea and you want to suggest it and let people upvote and that kind of thing, then you can put it here. And there's just this create idea button where you can log in and submit your idea. You've also got build plugins here. Now, actually demoing building a plugin is out of scope of this course, but let's just talk briefly about building a plugin. When you go to here, then you've got all this information. You've got documentation here, which talks about the IntelliJ Platform SDK, which is what you use to create a plugin. And typically you would build a plugin using Kotlin, which is JetBrains' own language. You can do it in Java if you wish though. If I click on here, then there's a quick start guide, information about this platform SDK, and it also talks about developing a theme as well. I did find this article here, which whilst is quite old, the plugin template it refers to, which I'll show in a sec, has been updated very recently, so it's still being updated. And this is by Matthias, who works for JetBrains. If I make that a bit bigger. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this if we skip this bit. So he talks about one template to rule them all. And he links to this GitHub repository. So if I click on this one, we can see that, if I zoom in a bit, so we can see that it's had a recent release, September this year at the time of recording. If I scroll down, it basically says to download it from the release. You can run this then in your download folder to install it as a new .NET template. Then to create your project, you can do .NET New, give it a name. So that will then create a starting point project. If we go down a bit more, it talks about these commands. Now, when you do the .NET New and it installs the template, like that for me was a batch file, This is obviously a PowerShell script that gets installed into your project as part of the .NET New template. And when I tried it and I ran this one, it downloaded all the Gradle binaries and all that kind of thing when I ran it. So it kind of installed all the dependencies. The template is pretty much empty, but there is a folder called samples, which gives you lots of reference. So for example, Code Vision, if we look at this and go to the README, that provides an example of doing something with the Code Vision kind of UI. If we look at notifications and go to the README, this gives an example of popping up a notification. So there's a whole ton of different examples here you can use as a reference. If you want something a bit more lightweight than creating a whole plugin, another option is there's something called ID Scripting Console. So that's in Integration Tools, ID Scripting Console. And what you can do is, if I go to Rider, close this and do Shift, I can type that ID Scripting Console. Then that has actually created the Groovy script, and this is Kotlin, which it didn't work for me if I copied this directly, but if I just paste in a different example, similar kind of concept, we're importing something in, and then we're doing messages that show info message, and then some message. If I select them all and do Control and Enter, then that's popped that message up. So you do have an option of a more lightweight way of automating Rider with scripting instead. So before we wrap up this video, I'm just going to do a few plugin picks of ones that I really like. So I've mentioned a few times in this course that I use Vim, and if I go back to the marketplace, and I think it's one of the top ones actually, top downloaded, show all, Idea Vim. So this one, if you don't use Vim, I probably wouldn't recommend it. Even if you're a big fan of keyboard shortcuts, the learning of Vim takes it to the next level. But if you're already used to using Vim kind of for shortcuts, this is a great plugin, but it is quite complex to the point when I do wonder how it's so popular given the massive learning curve it takes to use Vim. Another pick of mine, which I think this was in the top list as well, I did see it earlier, and let me just click on my hyperlink here, is called Key Promoter. So Key Promoter is quite useful. Basically, if you've got this installed, and as you're using the UI with the mouse, it will pop up suggestions saying you could have done this faster with a keyboard shortcut. It will tell you what the shortcut is. And this both acts as a learning tool, so you can learn the keyboard shortcuts, but also as a reminder to be using them as well. So this is quite useful. I normally have this installed. I've uninstalled it in my case because as I'm doing this course and I'm using the mouse to point at things instead of using keyboard shortcuts, we wouldn't want this popping up all the time. But once I finish recording this course, this is going straight back on again. Another one, GitHub. So this is quite a useful one. It adds things, for example, so if I just reinstall it. Okay. Then if this was a GitHub repository, let's just switch to that Aspire project. And then let's open a file. I can do things like Shift, open in GitHub. Not open in GitHub, open on GitHub. So I can do that and then just open that file actually in GitHub itself, which is quite powerful. And there are various different things you can do, like things related to cloning repositories and creating PRs and that kind of thing. And you can work with GitHub Actions, which is GitHub's kind of CI/CD kind of system. Another one, if you use Terraform, a Terraform plugin, and it's been a while since I've used Terraform, but I used to use it for quite a few different projects. And this was by far the best experience I've had working with Terraform files. I know there's a VS Code extension, but I actually really enjoyed working with them in Rider. And there's also various just for fun plugins as well. So for example, there's one called Power Mode, which as you're typing, it does this. I don't know why you'd want that, but it shows what you can do. There's various progress bar things, so you can replace the progress bars with things like a Mario kind of thing. And that's based on, there's something else called Nyan progress bar, which is quite a well-known one. But yeah, this just shows how you can customize your Rider UI in many different interesting ways. So that's plugins. In the next video, we're going to be looking at customizing Rider using themes and different color schemes.